Okay, so the big talking point in football right now is the financial crisis in French football. Ligue 1 hasn't got a TV deal. Eight clubs, minimum of eight clubs, potentially more, in the French top flight are facing bankruptcy before the start of next season, later on this summer, beginning of the autumn, and August, September. Now, the issues that beset French football go back a long way. They predate the COVID pandemic. We have to go back to when PSG was purchased by the Qataris, where French football really has, that is the catalyst to put French football in the situation it is now. So the Qataris buy PSG, and okay, they pump money in. Now, bear in mind, Monaco and Nice are also owned by billionaires. So Monaco and Nice, it's not as if they don't have money behind them. But here's the problem: Neymar, and Mbappe and Dembele, all being signed on ridiculous transfer fees that basically are unrealistic. Neymar's transfer is the reason why this channel exists. So when Neymar leaves Barcelona and goes to PSG, there's two reasons for this. Barcelona were basically were hemorrhaging money at the time, and that was one way to stop the money hemorrhaging, was to get rid of Messi's replacement for $250 million. Yeah, that's how much he went for, was 200 to 250 million, depending on add-ons and bonuses. $250 million. You could have bought 7 separate countries for that money. That was in 2017. And that is, I think, one of the key moments where French football was broken. Another mistake that the French Football Federation and Ligue came up with was scrapping their League Cup, the Coupe de Ligue, which has reduced revenues and ticket sales for clubs. They did that, I think, 2018. So they scrapped their League Cup, get rid of it. Partly because PSG kept winning it all the time, so they scrapped that. Then the COVID pandemic hits and the TV deal collapses. So currently, as things stand, only 10 games of domestic football are broadcast at the moment. 8 on Amazon, 2 on Canal Plus. That's it. The TV deal collapsed during the COVID pandemic. There hasn't been a new TV deal negotiated by the French Football Federation and Ligue since 2020. They can't find any takers willing to spend any money broadcasting. So the only chance you really get to see French clubs play is in Europe. And they're not very successful in Europe either. Let's be honest. Since Marseille won the Champions League in 1992-93, only 2 French clubs have made a Champions League final. Both of them are lost. AS Monaco and PSG. A couple have made semi-finals, but they've not had any success in any of the European club competitions at all. Out of the so-called Big 5 leagues in Europe, Big 6 if you include Portugal, they are the least successful. Even the Dutch have got more European success than France. So they're not succeeding in Europe, which is the only time the European or even North American audience would really see French clubs play. Most North American fans will only know PSG because of Messi and Mbappe and Neymar. They won't know the history behind Marseille, Lyon, Lille, Saint Etienne, Toulouse, Nantes, Auxerre. They won't know any of these clubs. So there's a lack of brand recognition, which is another problem. But it's that lack of TV deal that is killing them. Plus, you've got the issues with crowd disorder at French football. It's almost on a level of the 1980s in England. Doesn't get reported nearly as enough as it needs to. Fan disorder is commonplace. Low crowd attendances are commonplace. And that is an ongoing theme as well. It's like England in the 1980s. It really is like England in the 80s, 70s and 80s with the hooligan element or the ultras. There's constant disorder at games. No players want to sign there. Clubs can't afford to sign players. They're hemorrhaging money. And the fact that before next season starts, 8 clubs could have basically gone to the French Football Federation, we're bust, means 8 clubs could, in theory, be thrown out of Ligue. Now, this is big problems. If basically half the top flight in France is basically insolvent, This is a bigger problem than just France. This could be like a contagion for all the European leagues. Now, the French have been very, 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 very vigorous in bringing in their new spending rules to meet UEFA's new spending rules. Very vigorous. Even PSG now are basically going in a different direction. They've let Mbappe go. They've got rid of Messi. They've got rid of Neymar. Even PSG have realised, even with all their spending and all their financial clout behind them, A, they're not profitable, and B, they can't. They would be in breach of UEFA's new spending rules. Clubs are hemorrhaging money, and the issues, as I say, go back to when PSG was purchased by the Qataris, because they spent money like it was going out of fashion. They assembled a squad that no other French club could even compete with. Even Monaco and Nice, who have, well, deep pockets, they basically went, we can't attract the same player. And Monaco and Nice and Marseille and Montpellier, all these clubs have great histories, great trophy cabinets. But because of that lack of brand recognition outside of maybe Europe or France itself, with the North American audience who are obsessed with anything European football, they really are. People say the US and Canada, football doesn't work. It does, because more people watch the Champions League than the Premier League in the US. It's a known thing. The viewership figures are ridiculous. The TV deals are worth billions. The French TV deal is worth pennies, because there isn't one. And that's been a problem since 2020, 2021, when it collapsed. No one has come along, no broadcaster has come along and said, yeah, we'll take the view, we'll take the rights and we'll broadcast games both domestically in France and overseas. There is a massive problem with trying to get a broadcaster with enough financial clout behind them to buy the rights. The French Football Federation and Ligue cannot find anyone. The quality of football ain't that great either. You look at the French national side right now, how many of those players are actually playing in France, apart from for PSG? France, the French team that won the World Cup in '98 had a lot of domestically based players. The French team that won Euro 2000 had a lot of... There was a guy playing for Auxerre, for Christ's sake, in the '98 winning side. Where are the French players playing in France, playing for the national side? Back in the day, that the majority of French players played domestically. That isn't the case anymore. They can't keep hold of their best talent. That gets pinched by all the other European leagues. They end up playing all over Europe. They're not making any money, and clubs are basically bankrupt. And most of these French clubs haven't been breaking transfer records. They're just not making any money. Because if you look at the pie, if you look at the pie chart, and I've looked at this, where, in what country is the most popular sport, and who gets the share of revenues and fan viewership and fans in attendance. The UK, it's pretty simple. It's football, UK wide, then rugby union, then cricket, rugby league, and that's how the TV rights generally go. You look at the team sports and individualistic sports, you work out who attends what sporting events, how much money is spent on merchandise, and also TV rights. Germany, very similar. Football is still the most dominant sport. Ice hockey is actually pretty popular as well. Italy, very similar. Football, ice hockey and rugby union is pretty obvious. Motorsport. France, it's a very evenly distributed fans and attendance and viewership. Then the TV deal collapses, so no one's watching. And when people say, football on TV, the attendances will be low. There is no football on TV in France. The attendances are still low. So it tells you there's a much wider problem. The league has become very uncompetitive. Only in the last decade, I think, PSG haven't won the league like twice in the last 10 to 15 years or something. Very few clubs are challenging PSG because they can't financially do it. The rest of the French league is basically put in, even before UEFA came along, their own spending cap, going, we're not going to spend any money. Let PSG waste their money, breach financial fair play, do what they want. We're going to financially constrain ourselves to try and protect ourselves. The best French talent gets pinched either by PSG or by every other league in Europe. And it's suffering. Fans aren't turning up. No one wants to buy the TV package. And the only time you get to see French clubs outside of France on the TV, or even inside France, is when the Champions League is on. Because the Champions League is a different TV rights package. Completely different. And that tells you all you need to know. So, yes, French football was in crisis. and 8 clubs or more in the top flight in France could be bankrupt by the end of August. And that's what, 7-8 weeks away? We could see half the French top flight pretty much gone. Done. Having to reform. Thrown out the top flight, having to form down. It completely then disrupts the entire footballing pyramid in France, which, by the way, after the second tier, drops off a cliff. The quality level isn't there. The players aren't being developed. Because only a handful, as soon as you're a good youth player, you're scouted when you're 11, 12, 14, 15, 16 years old, and you're pinched by a big Premier League club, big Italian Serie A club, big German club in the Bundesliga, big club in Spain, potentially a club in Portugal, potentially a club in Holland. You might decide to be a bit of a journeyman and play in one of the other European leagues, Scandinavia, Greece, Turkey, for example. Belgium has more financial stability in their football than France. Scotland has a better TV deal domestically than France. It is really a real crisis. The French Football Federation haven't done anything. Ligue haven't done anything. So the French financial crisis, French club football is in crisis. It really is. It's in meltdown. And because PSG have all this money, they've made the league uncompetitive. And their clubs are hemorrhaging money. I mean, this is shown by losing that TV deal has killed French football. And they've spent a lot of money on upgrading the stadiums for the Euros in 2016. I mean, French sport is in crisis. They've had to, they're not going to host the next Rugby League World Cup. They've run out of money. There's been questions over the spending and the infrastructure at the Olympics and potential embezzlement and corruption. The Rugby Union World Cup, they overspent. And, yeah, French professional sport is in crisis. It really is. And we've got to see how this Olympics pan out, because this could be another disaster for France. This is a country that's going through a lot of social problems as well. And it's borne out with the football violence, with fans fighting each other and low attendances. But no, France is in crisis. And we have to go back to that moment where PSG is purchased by the Qataris. And that equality across the league, where it was a very competitive league before then. Only Lyon had four league titles in a row, which was a record. And people were saying that was bad for French football. At least they were regularly getting to the latter stages of the Champions League, and other French clubs were also giving the Champions League and Europa League a decent crack getting to the knockout stages. Now, apart from PSG, French clubs struggle in Europe. And even PSG haven't won the Champions League with all the money they've spent. With all Messi and Mbappe, Dembele, Ibrahimovic, Beckham. They had Ronaldinho at one point. Still can't win the Champions League. With all the talent they've had. And PSG have only been a club since 1970. And they're not even the biggest club in France when it comes to fan base and history. Most French fans hate PSG. Nationwide, it is hated. Outside of Paris, French fans hate PSG. Absolutely loathe the existence of the club. So, but we'll see what happens. We'll see if any French clubs do go to the wall. We'll see if a TV deal can be struck, or some kind of financial restructuring of the league to make sure that there is a league to, there's a league there come August, September, because this could be a contagion that spreads to other leagues across Europe. This is the problem. This is not just an isolated to France, because a lot of other leagues with the transfers and, player agents and managers, it's all an interlinked economy. And, people are saying, well, this could happen to England, this could happen to Germany, this could happen to Spain. It could. It really could. And Spanish football's in a financial mess as it is as well. Their clubs are really buggered financially, yet people talk about Barcelona and Real Madrid as these clubs too big to fail. Look at their debts. At some point, if the French money bubble has burst a long time ago, not that there was much money in French football apart from a handful of clubs with wealthy owners, if France and its top league fails, this will spread to the rest of Europe. This will spread to South America. And this will become a contagion. So while I understand your way for bringing in these new spending rules and the whole debate about the European Super League and the pros and cons, and there was a lot of cons to that, and the damage that would have done, can you imagine if the Super League went ahead? It would have killed leagues across Europe stone dead. Absolutely killed them. But a league is going belly up because of poor administration and poor club ownership, really, because these clubs are hemorrhaging money. They can't sign players because no one wants to go there, but they can't afford them. and we are at crisis point. I think the money bubble actually in football may have now finally burst. This is basically reminds me of the financial crash in 2008. I was having this very same discussion last week on the train to see my friends. Got into a conversation with another passenger because the train was late and we were waiting on the platform, and I basically said this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen is there's going to be a financial meltdown in an industry that is equivalent to the banking crash of 2007, 2008 to 2010. Because football has been operating in basically the same way as the mortgage lenders and the banks were 2 decades ago. They've been spending money they actually haven't got. They have got massive debts in what otherwise should be the most profitable industry in the world. Football shouldn't have debt, but it does. And these football clubs have operated like the dodgy banks did back in the 2000s, and it's coming home to roost. And this contagion could spread. But that's my thoughts on it. What are your thoughts on the French financial crisis in club football? I mean, could it spread to other leagues? If the French league collapses, which it has a very realistic chance of doing within the next 6 weeks, unless a rescue package can be found or a TV deal can be struck. Even if it's a cheap TV deal, it's still a TV deal, getting exposure. We could see this spread, and we could see other leagues start to feel the effects. So place your thoughts in the comments section below. What do you think happens? Do you think that the situation can be turned around, or is this the beginning of the end of the money bubble in football? Place your thoughts in the comments section below, and I'll have some more content for you guys very, very soon.